Arab American voters abandoned Democrats in record numbers last year due to the party's unabashed support for Israel's genocide in Gaza. Nowhere was this more relevant than in Michigan, where Trump not only won the entire swing state, but also Dearborn, one of the most heavily Arab American cities in the US. But despite that state's disillusionment with Democrats, there's one Michigander who is trying to bring that progressive Mamdani momentum into his state. Yes, in a race for Michigan's open US Senate seat next year. Egyptian-American and former public health official Abdul El-Sayed is hoping to be the Democratic Party's nominee, as he's set to face off against not one, but two major opponents in the primary. Now, this is not Abdul's first rodeo. Back in 2018, he ran in the gubernatorial Democratic primary on a campaign of Medicare for all, ultimately losing to centrist Gretchen Whitmer by more than 20 points. So what makes him think this time will be any different? And can that Mamdani-style progressive energy carry over in a state that went for Trump just a year ago? Joining me now to answer those questions is none other than the man himself, Abdul El-Sayed, who's been endorsed by, among others, Bernie Sanders. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you are not someone who started out your adult life with obvious political ambitions. You went to medical school, then you went into public health. What brought you to this point where you are now not just wanting to be a Democratic senator, but think you are qualified to be a Democratic senator?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Let me tell you first why I became a doctor. I was raised by my father, who's an Egyptian immigrant, my stepmom, Jackie, who's a daughter of the American Revolution. I spent my whole life explaining across different cultures within my own home. And my dad really wanted me to know where our family came from, so they'd ship me off sometimes by myself to Egypt, and I'd spend my time with my teta, my grandmother. She never got to go to school. Wisest, most intelligent person I've ever met. She lost 2 of the 8 babies to whom she gave birth before their first birthdays. In the 15 hours it would take me to get to Egypt, I'd cross a 10-year life expectancy chasm. I didn't have to go 15 hours. I could go 15 minutes into the city of Detroit from where I grew up and cross the same chasm. I wanted to do something about that. And in my training, I did a PhD in public health in your home country, in the UK, finished medical school at Columbia. And in my final years, I'm realizing that the reason people get sick usually has a lot more to do with the air they breathe, the water they drink, whether or not they can walk in their community without being victimized, whether or not they can see a doctor in the first place. Yeah. And that led me into a career in public health. I rebuilt Detroit's health department, then led Wayne counties. Across my work in public health, we've done everything from delivered guaranteed glasses to kids who needed them, stand up to big corporate polluters, make sure that kids weren't exposed to lead in their schools after the Flint water crisis, eliminate upwards of $700 million of medical debt. That kind of leadership in government is something we don't see out of the US Senate famously right now, given that just a couple miles from here, our government is shut down. Yeah. And I ran for governor back in 2018. I said something folks weren't quite ready to hear, which is that Donald Trump himself is not the disease of our politics. He's just the worst symptom of the disease. And if we're serious about taking on the disease, we got to name it. And that's the way that corporations and billionaires buy and sell politicians to rig a system against us. You see it in our healthcare, you see it in your utilities, you see it in big tech, you see it across all of the different ways that you see our wages suppressed and our prices inflated. And so I'm running a campaign on 3 simple ideas. We need to get money out of politics, put money back in people's pockets, and pass Medicare for all. And I know that across the 63 cities I've visited in Michigan, we're filling rooms in places where in theory I shouldn't be able to have a conversation because we're having the same conversation everywhere. We're not backing down from the obvious issues that people face.
You mentioned 2018 when you ran for governor in the Democratic primary against Gretchen Whitmer, the current incumbent governor. You lost to her by more than 20 points. What do you say to critics who say, why won't that just happen again? Why would Michigan Democrats not just rally around the centrist candidate again rather than you?
I'll say 3 things. The first time I ran, it was the first time I ran. I was 32 years old. I'd never run for office in my life. When I graduated college, I was the senior speaker, the valedictorian of my class at the University of Michigan. The main speaker was Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton asked me after the speech, he said, why are you going to medical school? Which is not a question people ask a senior going to medical school. I said, look, I love people. I love science. This is what I want to do. I'm also brown and Muslim. It's kind of what we do. But also, this is how I'm called. And he said, you know, you got a gift for communicating. Maybe someday you'll run for office. And the thing I told him was like, look, my name is Abdul Rahman. It's got 11 letters in it. It's got sounds that come out of parts of people's throats. Most people don't know they have. Like, people like me don't get to run for office. That was 2007. 2008, I watched a guy named Barack Hussein Obama run for and win the presidency. Trump gets elected in 2016. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know what, maybe Bill Clinton was right. And so I jumped in. 32, never run for office in my life. didn't know the first thing about running for office, but we ran a campaign on ideals and ideas. We got outspent 7-1, but we also took 30% of the vote in a three-way primary, finishing second. I was 2-1 more efficient than Gretchen Whitmer was, 3-1 more efficient than Sri Tanadar, both of whom are elected officials in Michigan. We left something there that we're now coming back to pick up. But more importantly, the times have changed.
Yes.
Not only am I 40 with 2 kids and a mortgage rather than 32 from my in-laws' basement, but people understand that central point that I was making, that Donald Trump is not himself the disease. So we've got to be about taking on the disease. So a lot of folks will tell you, we're going to fight back against Trump. But the question that I'm asking, and frankly people in Michigan are asking, is, what do you fight for? And we know what we fight for.
You have a Bernie Sanders endorsement. Have you thought about trying to get a Bill Clinton one?
I think that might be I mean, hey, you know.
Unlikely, I think, at this point. A few weeks ago, Axios reported that the Senate GOP has high hopes for flipping this Michigan Senate seat. Right now it's held by Democrats. Republican candidate Mike Rogers, who narrowly lost in that seat in the last round, he's expected to be the nominee for their party. Would Democrats be taking a risk? Again, this is what your critics will say. It's too risky in a close race, in a swing state where they have a clearly defined candidate who's run before, to have a Bernie-backed lefty running against that person in a state that Trump won just a year ago.
Yeah, these are the same Democrats who told us how they're going to beat Trump just a year ago. Those guys. Look, at the end of the day, I'm not running because I think I can win. I'm running because I think I am the only one who can win.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because of exactly what we watched happen in 2024. We watched a campaign that did not galvanize people around the basic needs of a dignified life, around a message that was about what we are for and the vision we have. That's what we're doing on this campaign. And
just to be clear, you're saying that your two main rivals, Mallory McMorrow, state senator, and Haley Stevens, a US congresswoman, cannot win this seat.
Yeah. And let me explain why. We lost 2 groups of people in 2024. We lost Arab and Muslim voters who were disgusted by the Democratic Party's handling of the genocide in Gaza. And we lost young men. If we are going to win, we have to win those people back. And what's interesting to me is I happen to be a young man who is Arab and Muslim. And I'm having conversations with these communities in ways that can get them to come back to our side. And I worry, right? Let me use a football analogy here. I know you think of football as a different thing, but for a long time in the Big Ten, in the Midwest, we would run 3 yards in a cloud of dust. We've been doing that for a very long time as a Democratic Party. And then all of a sudden people realize you can actually throw the ball. You can do different things. So I'm arguing that to win, we need to be able to get back the people we lost. And the way that we get back the people we lost is to have a galvanizing fight around a vision for an America that brings people together, one where we understand that the same system that is corrupting our politics to send our money abroad, to buy other countries' tanks and wage a genocide, is the same system that's corrupting our healthcare system so that we're watching as it's becoming deeply unsustainable. Those are the same problem. It all goes back to the ways that special interests and corporations drive our politics. And unless you're willing to say the obvious thing honestly and to take on the fight of taking those folks on, it's very difficult to come with your policy checklist and think that somehow you're going to win an election in Michigan in the era of Donald Trump.
Liking this video? Then don't just watch, hit like, share and subscribe. And tap the bell so you never miss a video or live show. But if you want early access to exclusive content, then you have to head to zeteo.com and subscribe now. You'll be supporting fearless, independent journalism. So as I mentioned, you do have 2 main rivals. Haley Stevens, Mallory McMorrow. It's a complicated primary. It's not just you as the Bernie anti-establishment progressive against the centrist establishment. There's 3 of you. And Mallory McMorrow has branded herself as an outsider. She's called Gaza a genocide. She said she's going to reject AIPAC donations like you are. Do you worry that with both of you running, you just risk splitting the anti-establishment, the progressive vote, and Haley Stevens wins by default?
No, I'll say a couple reasons why. Number one, there's something about saying it and another thing about being about it, right? I ran 8 years ago. I've been in public service in Michigan now for a decade. And people know who I am. When I ran last time, I didn't take corporate money. Both of the other candidates, both of my opponents, they've taken corporate money in every election they've ever run. Mallory may not be taking it this time, but in the past, right, she took it just fine. In fact, defended it. And the other part of it is I'm the only one running for guaranteed health care through Medicare for all. And people understand the difference between the authentic version, the one who's been out there fighting the fight, and the one who by virtue of political wins, has finally recognized that this may be a pathway. The other thing I'll tell you is this. You know, my experience at the DNC was very different. I didn't get to speak at the DNC. Famously, nobody of my ethnicity got to speak at the DNC. I was told I didn't belong there. I had endorsed Kamala Harris. I was the first Arab Muslim leader in Michigan to endorse her because I knew whether you saw this election from the eyes of a child in Palestine or the eyes of a child in Detroit, that Harris would have been better. And at the same time, the party was doing everything they could to ignore this challenge. And so I think people are going to look at this election and see two generic Democrats and one who's been about it for a very long time. And I think when that happens, I feel really good about our chances.
Have you had any conversations with Mallory McMorrow about whether one of you stands down if it becomes clear that only one of you can beat Haley Stevens?
She's running her race and we're running ours. I think by the time this election is coming down to election day, any need for that will be obviated by where we are.
Let's say you weren't running for the Senate. Who would have your vote, McMorrow or Stevens?
Man. That's an interesting question. I'm running because I think it would be hard to vote for either of them.
Well.
And look, if I had to pick between the two of them, I think you know where I'd go.
Last year, AIPAC went out of their way to outspend and unseat progressive members of Congress. Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, they lost their seats in primaries, due primarily to their criticism of Israel. You've been very critical of Israel. You mentioned a moment ago that you believe this is a genocide. Do you worry at all that AIPAC are going to come after you in this race? And do you have a plan to fight back if they do?
We know they will. They've already committed $5 million to one of my opponents.
Which opponent?
Haley Stevens. We understand that they are going to be spending a lot more through their super PACs, a whole network of different outside organizations. And so our approach, frankly, is to recognize what AIPAC actually is. It's MAGA billionaires throwing their money around to try to dictate the outcome of a Democratic primary. I think Michiganders are sick and tired of being told who they can and cannot vote for in Michigan. And by the way, AIPAC, similar to corporate PAC money, similar to other special interest PAC money, it all comes in to try and influence people's minds. I'm the only one in this race who's never touched a dime of corporate money. And I know that the same forces that are combining money against me, whether it's AIPAC or the corporate PACs, I know that in the authenticity of what I'm doing and the fact that I am running for people as a physician who's been about trying to guarantee people health care, I know that the pushback is simply in having an authentic message around what I am for and who I am for and why they're coming after me, right? For folks who want your money spent abroad to buy another country a tank, these are the people who are going to run ads against me because I think your money should be spent for you. And I think that message is critical. The other point I'll make is this. When you don't take corporate money, there are tens of thousands of people who want to support your campaign. I get a check from a nice old lady I've never met in Louisville, Kentucky, every month, right? And it's always, she writes me a nice letter telling me about the campaign and what she's watched, what video she liked. 45,000 people have already donated to this campaign. We're not even into election year yet. And so we think we're going to have the resources to be able to thrive.
You know that you are a brown man. You are a Muslim man. You are shocking, breaking news. You are an Arab American, and you call Gaza a genocide. As with Zoran Mamdani, who fits a very similar bill, obviously not Arab, but Muslim, brown man, critical of Israel. You've seen what's happened to Mamdani in his race, the accusations of anti-Semitism, the questions about Israel. He, ironically, is going to be, if he wins on Tuesday night, we're speaking on Monday, he's going to be mayor of New York. He has no control over foreign policy, despite the obsession with what's his view on Israel. You actually, if you're elected to the Senate, will have control over United States foreign policy. You will be able to sit on, if you get there, Foreign Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, all of those Senate committees that affect U.S. foreign policy. You're going to get asked a lot of questions about the American relationship with Israel, as you should. You are a Senate candidate. What would you do? What are you going to say when they ask you what they asked Mamdani, which was, do you recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state? How do you handle a question like that?
I mean, the reality of it is just the hypocrisy of the question.
We know it's a gotcha question, but you're going to get it.
No, but here's the interesting question. Almost every president, aside from this guy, who has served in that office, has articulated their belief in a two-state solution. Israel exists. Palestine doesn't. And so I always wonder why nobody asks me why Palestine doesn't have a right to exist. But we're like aiding, arming, and abetting the very people in Israel who want to foreclose on the possibility of Palestine existing. And so to me, frankly, it is about our principles and how we apply them evenly. If you believe in a two-state solution, then what are you doing to make it possible? my engagement with foreign policy, frankly, comes from my experiences as a child who spent some of my childhood summers in a country that is the second largest recipient of foreign military aid in the world, in Egypt. And I'll tell you, that money hasn't made the Egyptian people any richer or any freer. It has cemented the hold of a military dictatorship on its own people. So frankly, my position on this has always been, right? It's not about conditioning aid. I think under no condition should we be sending the money that should be buying our kids schools or healthcare or infrastructure to a foreign military to buy them tanks. And that we can start with Egypt. We can go to Pakistan, we can go to Jordan, we can go to Saudi Arabia, and we can go to Israel. I just think it's about principle.
You mentioned that you endorsed Kamala Harris last year, but before that you backed the uncommitted movement during the primaries to try and get her to shift, or get the Biden administration to shift. One thing the uncommitted movement called for was an arms embargo on Israel. If you are elected to Congress, will you be voting for an arms embargo? How do you plan to bring that about when there's not much support for it in the United States Senate?
Absolutely. And I think we have to do the work of persuasion, right? You asked me earlier, how do you win a race in Michigan? You go places, you talk to people. And I think one of the frustrations I've had with the Democratic Party more generally, one of the reasons I decided to run, is because we've given up on the work of persuasion. You believe in a certain set of ideas. You take those ideas to the people. You listen to what they want, and you have an exchange of ideas. And if your ideas are thoughtful, engaged, and inspiring, you'll find that people will start to support you. And I think the problem is we have often thought about our politics as being a discussion between 100 senators, right, or a president or 335 congresspeople, but we don't think about it as a discussion between 350 million Americans. And that is the conversation I'm looking forward to have, because I'll tell you this, when I sit down with folks, seniors in towns like Clare or towns like Ishpeming, when I have that conversation with them, I say, hey, would you rather us be spending our money to make sure your kid's school is a dignified place that's going to give them a shot at a future they deserve, or would you rather spend our money buying another country a tank? They know that their money's being misspent. And I want to have that conversation with the broader public.
Do you believe the Democrats and Kamala Harris lost Michigan because of Gaza?
I think it's part of a broad, complex set of things, but it's definitely part of it. More importantly than anything else, right? Our politics are about who can see the pain in people and turn that into purpose. Say all you will about Donald Trump, and I'll say a lot about Donald Trump. He was very good at being able to see people's pain and give them a narrative for why their pain existed. A bullshit narrative, but it's a narrative. We show up and we either ignore people's pain or we're speaking to a whole bunch of lists of policies that will show up in your life 3 years from now. And the thing about Gaza is this. For Arab and Muslim Americans, it is the bleeding piece of hypocrisy when it comes to American policy. For everyone else, though, it is a Rorschach test on your values. You say you want to stand up to Donald Trump. You say you want to stand up to the pharmaceutical CEOs, and you can't even stand up to the enforced wisdom in your own party? When you see 20,000 kids die and you want to hem and haw? So I'm grateful that one of my opponents finally came out and called it a genocide 2 years in. How many kids?
Mallory McMorrow, not Haley Stevens.
Yeah, how many kids needed to die for folks to be able to see that?
Were you surprised at how many Arab Americans in your state went for Trump?
No, unfortunately.
And have you seen any buyer's remorse, by the way?
I have, and I'll tell you this. I spent a deeply frustrating 4 months trying to have two sets of conversations. One set of conversations with Arab and Muslim leaders, people I've known and loved and who love me and have had great relationships with, who were on the precipice of electing a guy who once tried to keep people from their countries from coming here and is now trying to ship out people from our communities. And the other with a party that wanted to ostrich when it came to seeing the reality that it was seeing on the ground. And I
mean, Harris wouldn't visit Dearborn.
And this to me was unconscionable. And I'll just tell you this. We had a reckoning over the last summer about what was happening in Gaza. It didn't go far enough, but that was the moment in which people like State Senator McMorrow recognized the genocide. Imagine we had had that reckoning a year earlier. Imagine we walked into the election and people understood this.
What do you make of Kamala Harris's book tour and her reflections on her loss? Has there been enough introspection from the Democratic Party as to why you lost to Trump again last year? Has there been a reckoning?
I think we haven't as a party actually dealt with the foundational challenges to what the party has become. The first is that people can't find a message because they are being bought off by the very same corporations that are buying off Republicans. And then we are supposed to be the party of the people, but when you're trying to triangulate a message between what you think your donors want and what you think the people want, it becomes very, very difficult to bridge that. Number two, we have for a very long time tried to identify where we think people are and speak right there. But a campaign, it's a metaphor for an effort. And if you don't set forward a belief in something that is worth fighting for, you're not going to galvanize the kind of energy, the kind of enthusiasm that can take on an onward moving campaign like Trump's or like the Republicans. And the problem with us is we're having this conversation about popularism, right? Yes. What's popular? So like, if you just go to where the people think, at some point you're not trying to move them anywhere. And what happens is Republicans have not given up on persuasion. So they keep ratcheting our political system rightward, and we keep trying to meet it where it is and wondering why we're losing when we can't articulate a way forward that actually takes on a righteous fight. And I think we need to be taking on righteous fights. There are many of them to pick. I would start with healthcare for Americans.
I'm going to come back to healthcare in one moment. You mentioned ratcheting to the right. Republicans have been aided and abetted by social media companies, big tech. Yeah. I interviewed you in 2018 when you were running for governor for The Intercept, and you said to me at the time, I'm against the corporations who are using their influence to break the barrier between our economics and politics. That barrier is gone right now. I mean, we're way beyond breaking it. We have billionaires like Zuckerberg and Musk and Bezos literally sitting in the best row at the inauguration behind Donald Trump. You have Google and all these crypto companies funding the Trump ballroom, the Trump inauguration. What do you do about a situation like that? I mean, the full-fledged oligarchy that we seem to be in right now.
I just want to be clear about where we are. We're in Washington, D.C. Government is shut down. Donald Trump is building himself a let them eat cake ballroom while our kids are going without their food.
Yes.
If that doesn't scream oligarchy to you, I don't know what America you're living in. And so I think we need to be willing to identify how we got here. And I think sometimes we get so paralyzed by the nature of the problem that we forget we have agency in taking it on. I mean, you're doing it right here, right? That's what we're doing up and down the state of Michigan, having a conversation about what it looks like to actually stand up to corporate power and to take on the ways that corporate power has rigged the system against us. Yeah. It leaves us paying more and getting paid less for the work that we do. And I think it starts with being willing to have that conversation, but even beyond that, it starts with being willing not to be on the take. And so to me, if your critique of politics did not preclude you from taking corporate money the first day you ran, you just don't understand what the problem is.
Doesn't it depress you, though, that you can analyze the problem all you want, but the solutions don't still get the backing you need them to get? Let's take Medicare for All. You have one of the most passionate politicians in American history, Bernie Sanders, has been running on this issue. This has been his top issue for decades. He is, according to many polls, the most popular politician in the country. Yet he hasn't been able to move the needle at all within his party. He's got a couple of supporters in the Senate, 2, 3, 4 max, who say Medicare for All, despite years of pushing it, despite polls showing it's popular. How do you change that? Yeah. And let me throw in an extra line, and you'll know this because you've written a book on Medicare for All. A lot of people tell pollsters, we like the idea of universal healthcare, we like the idea of single payer. But then you ask them, do you like your own healthcare? And they say, yes, we do.
Yeah. I think there's two pieces here that are critical. Is political change linear, or is it like boiling water? I think political change is like boiling water. You heat it and you heat it and you heat it and it doesn't look like it's boiling, and then all of a sudden, the dam breaks. And the hard part with the healthcare system is it's becoming more and more unsustainable every year. I'll just tell you a story from Michigan right now. We just watched as 3 health providers have pulled out of the ACA exchanges. What that means is that there is now basically one provider you can get on the exchange. If there is one insurance provider on the exchange, what that basically means is the system has become deeply unsustainable. Once that starts to unravel, I don't know where it stops. It is a deeply scary thing to me as somebody who's worked inside the system and studies the system. So this is becoming more unsustainable for more people. And so in putting it out there, in fighting for it, in articulating a belief that we really can, as the richest, most powerful country in the world, guarantee everybody health care in our country, I think Senator Sanders has done a lot to heat that pot. But it's going to take more and more of us driving the conversation. And again, that's where I go back to persuasion. Because I've been up and down my state. We've been doing these open our healthcare town halls.
But you accept it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Some on the left suggest it's like, oh, everyone supports it. If only we got more. It's actually, people are all over the place on healthcare.
People move a lot. And there's a lot of user education that we have to do. The insurance industry and the hospital industry and big pharma, they keep this hard to read and understand on purpose, right?
100%.
They use words like deductible and premium. There's nothing premium about
I came in from the UK, I still don't understand. I've been here 10 years, I don't understand that.
Yeah, and you're a pretty smart guy. So I think the hard part about this is it's very difficult when you're trying to work a job, keep your kids fed, get them taken care of, to have to understand how this system works. We have work to do.
Yes.
Part of what my job is to help to explain this system to folks, help them to understand the ways that the health insurance CEOs and the pharma CEOs have been rigging the system around them, and help to show them the ways that Medicare for All can fix it. I know I'm up against those folks, and they got a ton of money, and they're going to spend a ton of money. In fact, we're about to drop an ad, right? Just a fun spoof of a 1993 ad that destroyed Clinton-era health reform. It's called the Harry and Louise ad, where they said, when they choose, we lose. But ask yourself, everybody in this month is about to have to choose their next year's benefits.
Yeah.
And when they choose, who wins? Not us.
Yeah.
We lose. And it's the same story 32 years on. We have an opportunity to fix it. That takes persuasion. It takes the will of continuing to drive the conversation forward and move people, despite what the industry spends, to try and mis and disinform them.
Just before we finish, I got to ask about Islamophobia. Back in 2018, when I asked you whether you were worried about whether Islamophobia would stifle your candidacy, you seemed rather unconcerned back there. You were more optimistic, perhaps. You said a small, very loud group making Islamophobic noises, and you said the majority of people will reject that kind of racism. Here we are in 2025, more than 7 years later. That racism, that anti-Muslim racism and bigotry, is off the charts right now. Some would argue it's worse than it was after 9/11. Obviously, Zoran Mamdani, on the eve of perhaps winning the mayoralty of New York, is driving a lot of that, or provoking a lot of that Islamophobia from the bigots. You also got in Minneapolis, Omar Fateh running for mayor there. Do you think Islamophobia has gotten worse in recent years? Have you experienced it yourself during your campaign?
I'll tell you this, America has always been in tension between its ideals and a few small people who want to make this country only for themselves. And as more and more people have elected in America that is about ideals, you're going to find that this minority is going to get louder, they're going to get more unhinged, they're going to get more frustrated. And look, they've infected the White House. But this country is an amazing place. I told you, I grew up in a house where Muhammad and Jackie built something that was bigger than the sum of its parts. I'm so grateful for both sides of that upbringing. And America is maybe the only place that I can imagine where I got the opportunities I got, and I got that ability to grow up in that kind of a place. That's what we're talking about here. So whether it's Muslims or black folk or Native American folks or Latino folks or Asian folks, all of us, right, have been in this moment of having to push back and hold our space to say that it doesn't matter how you pray, doesn't matter who you love, doesn't matter where your family came from, that you could be just as American as anyone else. And since we had that conversation, we watched as not one, but two Muslim American congresswomen were elected. We watched as Muslim mayors were elected in places like Dearborn and Dearborn Heights.
Yes.
We're about to watch more Muslims get elected. I just want to say there's something special about that, because it's not just that notion of like, I can belong here. It's that notion that I can put myself forward to aspire to the greatest ideal of citizenship, and that my fellow Americans would select me to represent them. That's happening. And so you're seeing this shrill Islamophobia because they're losing.
Yes.
Right? And
Well
I just
said.
want all of us to understand why they're doing it. They want to tell us we don't belong, and the more that we step into our dignity as being just as American, but no more American than anyone else, the more we start to say, hey, listen, you find me offensive, not because I want to read my faith into the public laws, because you're trying to read your public faith, your faith in the public laws, right? The more we stand in and say, no, this is a place where we separate church and state, the more that happens, the more all of us as Americans, white, black, Asian, Arab, whatever, win. And that's the America that we have to keep our eyes on.
Well said. Last question. You've talked a lot in your campaign about your hatred for corporate greed. You've talked about oligarchy and corporations today. You found some pretty interesting ways to communicate your opposition to it, one of which was through a video of you eating a 12-stack cheeseburger. Let's play that clip.
Look, nobody needs $100 billion, just like nobody needs a 12-stack cheeseburger. And this is the point. Why you need all that money? It's painful to try and consume it all.
How enjoyable was it to do that ad Did you finish the burger?
No, I got through 7
That's disappointing.
patties.
Just 7.
So let me just tell you the story. There's a place called Hamburger Mikey in Muskegon, Michigan. It's phenomenal. Anybody who's in Muskegon, I highly recommend. And it's a 12-stack burger with fries and a shake that you got to finish in 12 minutes. I made it to like 10 minutes, and I had only eaten 7 of the stacks. I got to tell you, I didn't eat for another 24 hours. It was delicious, but like I haven't had a burger since. So
I have no plans to ever run for office, but I do want to eat a 12-stack cheeseburger. I think I could pull it off.
Listen, come with me. We're going to do Hamburger Mikey's in Muskegon later on in the race, and let's see how you feel
when you're ready for it. When you're ready for it again. Abdul El-Sayed, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Mehdi, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you.
Did you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications. For exclusive content and to support our independent, unfiltered journalism, head over to zeteo.com. Your support matters.